For 3 decades, I have served the memory of my father and my brothers, and fought for those who have suffered the pain of injustice. I do not regret those years, but it is time to live for myself, and let them go. Let go of all of this.
This video isn't for Assassin's Creed fans, because you as fans already understand why you're here. This video isn't for you if you've been there since the very beginning. But instead, this is for those who didn't quite understand, for those who don't get why every yearly announcement is followed by a tidal wave of hype. This video is to let you in the mindset of an Assassin's Creed fan like myself. This is my love letter to the franchise, but more specifically the how and the why the franchise became the juggernaut that it is today. This series holds a very special place in so many hearts. We will remember exploring the beautifully atmospheric Victorian London of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, or engaging with the redcoats of the American Revolution of Assassin's Creed 3, or maybe raiding pyramids of ancient Egypt. And of course, singing along to those Tobuscus literal trailers 10 years ago, the community and fans got together and realised that this is something special.
Curious hooded man watches
From a distance. Assassin's Creed has found a way to bring back its players time and time again with its beautiful recreation of cities or historical representations. The franchise has found a way to recreate itself and keep relevant with the latest trends and console upgrades. Whether you're a fan or not, Assassin's Creed as a series has found a way to socially sneak its way into your life, and in some cases into your disc tray. Even if it's just because, oh, it's a pirate game and I want to give it a go, or maybe it's a chance to explore Rome, I'm sorry to tell you, but Ubisoft did exactly what they set out to do. Work out a way to put your hand in your pocket to pay a little bit of money to play Assassin's Creed. By looking into that one moment you was able to be a Viking, or maybe the moment you got to be a badass Spartan, you were persuaded by the charm that every game brings to the table. And they've proven one thing that no one can deny: Assassin's Creed has legs as a franchise, and it's here to stay. Listen to me talking about this because I love the franchise so much, but of course it's also full of so many problems. Lame characters, tired plot lines, inconsistency, and possibly the most criminal of all, it rarely takes new steps or even tries to be anything groundbreaking, rather just hanging on to what's new and what's relevant at the moment. Assassin's Creed, unfortunately for most, looks and feels like a never-ending cash grab year after year. And this is a red flag to many people, and even fans have come and gone over the years. Every time we come back and hope for something new, we're most often let down by a series that's stuck in finding its own identity or just appealing to the masses. I mean, for one reason, the games make bank. Every single year, they're always going to make a profit out of Assassin's Creed. And of course, there's still plenty of stories to be told in this ever-expanding universe. Assassin's Creed's name has been dragged through the mud for the last decade, and still somehow, I come back to these world and characters over and over again, hoping to see something that's been gone for a very long time, but it hasn't really appeared. Assassin's Creed up front seems like a yearly binge of money grabs, toxic fanboys and disappointment. But for us, and for me as a fan, Assassin's Creed truly has a secret weapon I don't think anyone quite understood. During the 6th generation, Ubisoft were gods at what they did best. And what was that exactly? From the huge success of Rayman, Splinter Cell, Beyond Good and Evil, a hand in very popular Batman games, Rainbow Six, Ghost Recon, 13 and so many others, Ubisoft was a force to not be messed with, and they had their hand in every single genre just to make sure they were always present, and 7 out of 10 times they would knock it out of the park. If you saw this logo or maybe even heard this sound, you knew you was in for something special. But one franchise could not have made this any more clearer that these were the adventure action guys to go to that could compare to the likes of Tomb Raider and Zelda. The Prince of Persia. Not the original, I mean the Sands Time storyline. These games looked stunning for the time, felt impactful with every hard-hitting combat scenario, and featured movement that was unlike anything seen in the gaming landscape at the time. With the combined movement of the Prince of Persia franchise and the excellent character-driven stories and stealth of Splinter Cell, this had safely put Ubisoft's name on the map, and they weren't leaving anytime soon, and anyone who was a fan of these two franchises was really itching for their next dose. The 7th generation of console was rolling around, and just for a moment, I want to take you back to that landscape. With the huge success of Bungie's Halo series and Call of Duty making an early explosive impact on the industry, it was safe to say that the first person focus was seen a lot in early 7th generation games. Rainbow Six Vegas, Perfect Dark Zero, Killzone, Bioshock, Haze, and if you're lucky enough you had an abundance of cover shooters as well to go along with that, like Gears of War and Uncharted. It's not to say that there wasn't any action-adventure platform games like there were before, because they were still around, just not in the same abundance. And all while the gaming scene was unloading a barrage of FPS shooters at anyone who would play a console, there was something that Ubisoft was cooking up in the background, their next big thing. Originally conceived as an idea of a Prince of Persia game known as Prince of Persia Assassins, it was eventually to become what we all know, love and even hate, Assassin's Creed. Now let's take you into my personal experience and let's go back to 2007 for a moment in my old little house. I didn't have access to the internet in the same way many people did. I wasn't even bothered by the internet or even interested. I was too busy playing games on my PlayStation 2 or even early games on 360. I, a lot like people of my generation, grew up playing Splinter Cell or the Prince of Persia games, and mainly for me, Warrior Within was a personal favourite. So hearing that Ubisoft was making a next generation stealth game meant the world for me. I can't express how excited I was when I first saw the image of Altair standing on top of the rooftops and the game taking up an entire 2-page spread of a magazine. Assassin's Creed hype was in full set in high school. For me and all my friends, all we could do is gather around this magazine and ponder about what the story is and what this game is about. And then the day finally arrived. I actually didn't get it on day one, I got it on Christmas. The day arrived and I remember running up the steps, taking huge strides, missing 3 steps at a time. Imagining using that crossbow I saw from the trailer or unsheathing my sword against the city guards and immersing myself in the world of the Third Crusade. I didn't know much about history back then, so it was just sword and knives for me. History was at my fingertips. The lights were turned off in my room. When I say they were turned off, the light bulb was dead, so the room was completely dark. I had my TV on full blast, sitting way too close than I should have been, and then that iconic Ubisoft logo appeared, and here we go.
I applied my heart to know wisdom, and to know madness and folly.
Ubisoft had pulled a fast one on us. They knew what they advertised in the game, they held their cards close to their chest, and yet was to even show any signs of this secret weapon. I was so confused the first time I booted up Assassin's Creed to find out that it was a sci-fi game. And that realization there and then is what hooked us as fans. In the first 5 minutes of the game, they build up your intrigue and instant fascination of this world. Who is Desmond Miles? Why do the Templars want him? Why is it so bright? And can I go back in...
I like to keep this for close encounters.
As I said earlier, the gaming landscape looked a lot like this, so Assassin's Creed, which still looks amazing 14 years later may I add, demanded your attention with its realistic presentation and scale and beauty of every single city. Acre felt grim, sick and oppressed, Damascus thrived in its market, and Jerusalem felt spiritual and intimidating all at once. The bustling streets, vendors, drunks and broken people all felt tangible to the touch. And that was the goal of Assassin's Creed's gameplay. Every grab, punch, climb and close call and leap of faith was given to you, but not as a means of escape, but as a tool of survival and skill. And with that control came something that Assassin's Creed never let go of: style. The style and flair of Altair allowed for him to stand out of the crowd. It was his cinematic awareness. Every conflict, sword slash perfectly timed counter made every Assassin's Creed fan feel like the ultimate weapon. Of course, now going back to the early Assassin's Creed games, the combat is slow and outdated, but by making many improvements and innovations from other games over the years, you see the importance that this combat had on games that we play today. There's an early glimpse of that free flow combat counter scheme and even motion capture kill animations that made Assassin's Creed's presence in the action adventure genre feel way more important than it's actually given credit for. And even with all this style and flair, Ubisoft is still holding that secret weapon back. We're getting to it. In this game you're given 9 targets, 9 men who are part of an organisation known as the Templars, and every single one of them sees the plot expand, but this game only gives you plot and story and lore in breadcrumbs, leading closer and closer to the truth of what the hell is even happening. And this is a theme that appeared in the first game prominently. Suggestion, lies and illusions, and of course conspiracy. And of course, playing this for the first time, all these questions will run through your head. What did all these Templars have in common? What was the power they spoke of, and what the hell is that treasure? I could go through the whole plot, but that's not really the point of this video. Overall, Altair learns that he's been betrayed not by the Order of Assassins, but instead one man, his leader, Al-Mualim. Of course, Al-Mualim is a man who is mad with power and greed. I will never forget the return to Masyaf near the end of the game. There was a thick layer of atmosphere in the air, something wasn't right. The whole town had gone mad. Everyone was brainwashed, walking around almost like zombies. How is this fitting into my history game and sci-fi game? And then suddenly...
No! What's happening?
What's going on here? Is this actually magic? Is it actually going to turn out to be all mystical and magical by the end of it? Why is Altair floating? Why were they brainwashed? And why have all the targets come back? It all turns out it's hallucinations and suggestions. After you defeat your leader, he drops the treasure known as the Piece of Eden. And then a map appears. We as the player and Altair are powerless to the power of Piece of Eden. What did any of this mean? Was Altair going to travel around the world? Were we finally going to get the answers to what these Templars were even talking about? I remember being left alone in my room. Jaw dropped open. What's going on here? What's happening? The plot going through my head over and over again. But before I had moments to come to my own conclusion, Desmond is then pulled out of the Animus and we start seeing these symbols. A side effect known as the bleeding effect from the Animus. And Desmond, just like the audience, says,
What does it mean, I wonder?
Ubisoft didn't just show their secret weapon, they fired it at full power. Two years. 2 years we was left with no answers. 2 years I came back to that room trying to decode the writing on the wall. And for 2 years I believed I was missing something. Assassin's Creed 2 was the beginning of something special and someone special. Ezio Auditore. This was the beginning of the Ezio experiment. It's hard to understate the effect that Ezio had on the franchise and has on the franchise. Most will tell you that they love him, his charm, his growth, his sexy look, and others will love characters that feel a lot like him. Ubisoft for years have been trying to replicate the lightning trapped in a bottle that was Ezio. Edward, Arno, Alexios. Seriously, take your pick. What we got to experience with his story is unlike anything we've had and seen ever since. Of course, we've seen characters grow and even span a series of games. We have seen characters die and express loss and growth, and we've even seen greater stories than the ones that Assassin's Creed offer. But Ezio's tale offers something that not many of these games are willing to do. From the beginning moments of his life, we see Ezio as a small baby. Literally, the first second out of the womb, we play as this character. We see him grow up, we see him become the man he is going to be. The Ezio story allowed us to stick with this character and grow with us over the years. For me personally, I was in the final 3 years of high school when we saw Ezio hit the screens. Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood and Revelation had such an impact on the franchise that they continue to be the high bar that the games often still have trouble reaching to this day. When we first see the Ezio we know and love, he is a teenager getting into fights and sleeping around with women. We witness the death of his family and we understand his grief and rise to become an assassin. We see that he learns of the mysteries of the Templars and of course the Order. And in Brotherhood we see him become the great master assassin history wants to remember him for, and in Revelations we find an Ezio on a personal pilgrim to uncover the secrets of Altair. A lot happens in 5 years. 5 years of Assassin's Creed 1 to Revelations. And 4 years of never really getting an answer to what happened to Altair after Assassin's Creed 1. Let's go back to that secret weapon for a moment. The Ezio trilogy left fans with some of the biggest mind-blowing moments and jaw-dropping cliffhangers the franchise has ever seen. And I'm never going to forget the first time I sat alone in a room at the end of Assassin's Creed and listening to the hologram of Minerva turn to the camera, break the fourth wall and speak to us as the player, and even mention Desmond in a sequence that was set in the Animus. Ezio was completely left in the dark, while Desmond is forced to escape the Templars at the end of the second game. In Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, the ending leads Desmond to finding Ezio's hidden piece of Eden hid away, and Desmond is mind controlled and forced to kill Lucy. The screen once again cuts to black. Then a year later we wake up in the Animus, find Subject 16, the man responsible for all the writing on the wall, and learning about what happened to Altair and Ezio and how their stories come together, and finding out what truly happened to the ancient civilization. 5 years! 5 years, every single ending we was left with a cliffhanger and we were left with questions. There is a reason why these endings were so impactful. It may seem frustrating, but what it was special. That was Assassin's Creed. Of course, games had linked stories before and told stories in the same sort of vein and cliffhanger usage, but Assassin's Creed offered something special. It allowed us to go back 1 year later and continue right where we left off. Most often these early games you can edit these together and feel no difference. The game will just continue and say this is what happened and this is where you left off. The wait every year felt exciting because we was finally going to get the next piece of the puzzle we have been pondering for the last 12 months. The franchise now of course getting a lot of hate and sideways glances for its yearly appearance, but back in the day this was its bread and butter, and this is what made Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed stand out above the crowd. It knew the story it was going to tell, it knew where it wanted to take the story once upon a time, and it knew exactly who its audience was. The marketing for the yearly releases was absolutely brilliant, and it's exactly what the franchise needed to stay above the rest. To tell a story that really engages the players to continue and keep buying, it worked so well. Of course now I don't think it's ever hit the highs of the first 4 games, but the story they were telling was so fantastic, and it's exactly what made Assassin's Creed so special. As a fan, I was hanging on every single year. Many fans were, and we were so excited to get the story conclusion that had been building up for the past 5 years, and there's no way that we wasn't going to get that ending we didn't deserve, right? We never really did. Ubisoft has dangled the ending of the franchise in front of us many times, and it just never seemed to have come. Altair, Ezio, Desmond, and most of the fans, we're all left in a state of what's next. It took us 4 years to really give Altair the arc he deserved, and even then it wasn't even explored to its fullest in game, and for those fans who wasn't reading the comics, you only got these little snippets of his life. Ezio's whole purpose is to work out what his purpose is. And of course, we as the fans already knew that he had already fulfilled his purpose by the end of the second game, so his whole life was him chasing his own tail, hoping for something better and more prosperous out of his purpose of life. He never really understood that he had fulfilled his destiny and he's already been the prophet that he was meant to be. By the end of Ezio's journey, he's an old man refusing to even get involved with the big next mystery that Ubisoft and the Piece of Eden was dangling in front of him. And then where does that leave Desmond Miles? Well, don't get me started on what happened to him. Ubisoft built up this whole world, lore, the training, the bleeding effect, learning to accept his assassin's heritage and finally putting a stop to this endless war. All this sacrifice, all these years fans kept coming back was all for nothing. As of writing this, it's 2021. I've been running after that next Assassin's Creed jaw-dropping cliffhanger, memorable character and the hope of an end of a franchise for 14 years. Ubisoft, I'm tired. I'm tired of you. I'm tired of you starting what you could never finish. Since the very beginning, you have never ever known when to let go. You left us pondering what happened to Altair. You left us staring at that map. The last image we had for him for 4 years was him standing there in confusion, no conclusion to his story. It wasn't until Revelations that we finally saw him grow old and die, and finally put all the theories and conspiracies of Assassin's Creed 1 to rest, much like your protagonist. And then it was just waiting for the next hero to come along and then pick right up where we left off. For 3 years, Ezio at the end of every single ending was left in a constant state of confusion or grief. And when it all came to his final game, he never really got to say his goodbyes, but instead talking to the player and talking to Desmond, demanding for it all to stop. But it doesn't stop, does it, Ubisoft? It doesn't stop. You always grab a new character and drag them along with your convoluted plots, put them through hell, put us as the player through hell and make us ponder endlessly what is actually going to happen next. And then just leave them there in that final moment and state of confusion to say, who's next? But that's just it, isn't it, Ubisoft? You genuinely cannot say goodbye. Why would they if they're making so much money off a franchise like Assassin's Creed? Think about Sam Fisher, Rayman, Prince of Persia. They're all existing, they're all still alive, but they're never ever gonna get their final goodbyes, but instead the fans are gonna be sitting there waiting just for a little hint, knowing that these characters' stories will finally all come to an end. And that is exactly what's happened to Assassin's Creed. I know for a fact this year I will be knocking and running to get my next fix of the franchise, and time again I will be coming back. But it doesn't mean I'm not aware of what this series is going through and what's exactly happened here. Ubisoft, it's okay to let go. It's okay to put an end to it all and say your goodbyes and allow your fans to say goodbye to the franchise and put the story to rest. Like you finally did with Altair and Ezio. End it. End it all now. Allow for the magic of the franchise to come back. Allow it all to come together and be worthwhile. Maybe one day we will see a new beginning for the franchise and people will be excited again. I love you, Assassin's Creed, but you need to let go. So, how's everybody doing? It's been a while since I made a video. I do apologise. I mean, I still have plans for videos to be made, but I'm just not going to be as consistent as I was before. Just for me, I want to make things that I want to talk about, and I recently went back and played the original 3 Assassin's Creed. I have decided that Assassin's Creed storytelling wasn't really appreciated because, of course, it's been blocked and blinded by the a constant barrage of crap that they've just been releasing endlessly for the past 15 or so years. But yeah, I had fun making this video. It was a good comeback. I will be continuing making more videos, so you will see me again soon. I'm still working on my next phobia video as well. I'm excited for that one. It should be fun. But yes, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you're still a fan of Assassin's Creed. Are you still hanging in there like I am, hoping for the credits to eventually roll and all the stories and whatever's happening with Layla or what fuck her name is? I'm excited to see where it goes, and I hope you're excited as well. But at the same time, I'm excited to see if it comes to an end. I hope it does. I will see you in the next checkpoints. Goodbye.